Welcome to the Rebel Movement podcast, where we give you the tools and resources to build your business your way. Today, I'm really excited because you're with me, Grania O'Malley, but you're not just with me. Today, you're with my lovely biz friend and also current member of the Rebel Movement membership, the lovely Arijana. Arijana is an OBM. We are going to be diving into how you can create freedom in your business by simplifying what you're doing, outsourcing, streamlining, all of the really important things that give us actual tangible freedom in our business. And Arijana is the queen of this. Arijana, welcome to the podcast. It's great to have you here.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. Do you want to give us a little bit of an intro to you, to your business, your journey, how you came to be doing what you're doing, so we get a feel for where you're at and why this is so important to you?
Sure. So I started losing my earbud. I started in the online space. It was around 2016. At that time, really, it was just very much my goal was get out of my corporate job, period. And so I stumbled into the world of virtual assistants, discovered what that was, and started freelancing. I saw that as my opportunity to like create stable income pretty quickly at that point in time, just to be able to leave my job. And then I was like, I'll figure out the rest later. So I started that and then kind of fell into the whole world of like online courses and coaches and all of that. Just, when you first start working in the online space, it's like you keep sort of opening doors and then there's this like all this other stuff that's out there.
Um,
So that was really fun discovering everything. And I had sort of prior to that, my schooling was in psychology, and so I think that was also partly why I gravitated towards working with coaches a lot, and I really loved. Like I loved my role and the sort of operations and admin side of things, and tech things, but then I really resonated with the subject matter too, and so that was all really fun for me. So anyway, that evolved over time. I started getting into funnel building and more so the tech side of things, and then like systems and processes, up until now, where I mostly support people in an OBM capacity.
I never knew the psychology piece. I love having conversations like this because you always find out something new about people. That's so interesting.
Yeah, that's what I did my undergrad in. And it's funny because it's like I was one of those people in high school. I was just like, when you start having careers classes and everybody's like, what do you want to be? And that question was like so stressful for me because
Me
I
too.
didn't know. I didn't know. And I was like, why do I have to pick one thing? This is so crazy to me. And so when I went into psychology, it was purely because the subject matter interested me. I had zero plans of like what I would do afterwards. And it still does. So it's just, I'm glad I did it. Sometimes people, so for some people, their perspective might be like that it was a waste. And at some point in my undergrad, I did think that too, because I was like, you go through like your quarter life crisis of what am I doing? Um, but it definitely has its purpose in a
Absolutely.
big way.
Yeah, yeah, no, I love that. And I mean, I think when we start talking about systems and automations and streamlining, you think it's so technical and unsexy. But if you're coming at it with that background of psychology and looking at business as a holistic thing, this is part of the process of creating the kind of life that you want, building in your systems, building in your automations, outsourcing the things that aren't making you feel good on a personal level and lighting you up inside. So, I love
Absolutely.
combination. Yeah. So, okay, if we're going to dive into talking about the importance of systems in your business and streamlining and outsourcing, what do you think, first of all, is the number one thing or the reason why entrepreneurs, and I think especially female entrepreneurs, hold back on outsourcing so much in their business? Because it's a pattern that I definitely see.
Yeah, and this goes back to what you were just saying, how like psychology does play into it. Um, a big part of it is like our fears and limiting beliefs around it, right? And so, I mean, one, we want to control things. We're afraid that somebody else is going to mess something up. And then it's also like sometimes we've come into this world where you now find that you're a business owner, but you've never been like taught how to do that. And if you haven't been in like a leadership role previously, and even if you have in a corporate setting, it's still different to hand off your own stuff to somebody else than it is in that kind of an environment.
Okay.
So I see a lot of that. Like right now, I just started working with a new client, and they're a husband and wife team, and they have some subcontractors, but they've never had an OBM to hand off work on that level. And so it's very much like I can see that we're going to be sort of doing baby steps where I have to navigate with them, kind of like, okay, well, you're going to hand this piece off to me. It's going to be okay.
I will
We're going to
protect
be
it.
fine. Yeah. And just kind of like piece by piece going back and forth until they build out that trust, and then they can kind of like relax more into it.
Okay. And say for clients like that, how did they get to the point of feeling like they were ready to even approach you? Like what are the things that you would say, this is how you know that you're ready to outsource, or these are the things that you should put in place in your business to get to the point of feeling safety around outsourcing, but also being, I suppose, at that point of growth in your business where it makes sense for you to outsource? What advice would you
Mhm.
say about what they need to put in place?
Well, I think that it makes sense to outsource very, very early on in different ways, right? Like it's going to look different at different stages of your business. Um, a lot of times people, I'll say it this way, like a word of caution, really, is that sometimes people will say, okay, I want like a general virtual assistant or an OBM or project manager. And it's coming from a place of they're just so overwhelmed where there's so much going on that they just want that to stop. Like they want the chaos and overwhelm to stop, and they think that just putting somebody into a role, they can like have that overnight, and it doesn't work that way. So I guess one thing is just really like understanding and making sure that your business, regardless of how many people are doing the work, that the work that's being done makes sense and that you're stripping away the things that aren't necessary. And then stepping into the place of like, okay, well, what can I hand off?
Mhm.
I always like, as a first step, you really want to make sure that you know what you are doing, because oftentimes we don't really know what we're actually spending our time on. So like I'll get people to do time audits, and really track their time for a week or longer and see what they're spending their time on. And then from there, you can be like, okay, well, I think this piece I can hand off to a social media manager, or this piece can go to a VA.
I love that. And I'm a big fan of doing that as well. Capacity planning, looking at your ideal week and looking at what your
Yeah.
currently looks like and figuring out, okay, where is my bottleneck here or what's not matching up? So I love that. But that completely plays back into the psychology piece as well. Especially when we're building businesses in the online space, you're doing it to have flexibility and freedom. And if you're finding yourself completely overwhelmed and completely like your to-do list is 7 miles long, there's something there that is out of alignment for you in terms of the reason why you started your business and what your business currently looks like. But that's such a practical way of figuring it out, literally tracking your time, sitting down and being like, okay, what does my week look like? Where is my time going? Because I know that for me, and I know you're a mom as well, when you're a mother, I think it's even more important to do that because there's so much other stuff going on with your kids that you're juggling in the background. So to be able to actually look at what you're doing on a practical level day to day in your business is super, super important. So absolutely love that. Okay, I have another question for you that came to my mind as we were talking there. So like when we're talking about streamlining, we hear this phrase all the time, you want to work smarter, not harder. I actually hate that phrase because I had a boss years ago who used to say it all the time, and he was like the laziest person I've ever met in my life. So that's really a triggering phrase for me anyway, to work smarter, not harder. But let's take that as a concept, right? If it's a thing that you do want to be working smarter, that you want to be making sure that the time that you have available to you, you use it in the best possible way. There's a fear there, I think, that comes up for people sometimes around losing the personal touch or losing that like hands-on piece that they might have with clients. Because when you're building a personal brand, it's a really important part of it as well, to feel like you're having that connection, that deep connection with your clients. So how can you do that? How can you pair those things up so that you still retain the personalized approach and those deep connections that you want to make, and calm down your nervous system and don't feel overwhelmed and outsource in the right way? What would be your advice around doing that?
Yeah, so I love automation, obviously, and it's a big part of what I do for myself, for clients, and so on. Um, Sorry, can you hear the dog?
No,
It's the neighbor's dog. It
that's
is just like
okay.
losing its mind.
This is the thing about this podcast is real life. We're not trying to be uber polished. We're like, this is it, people. This is what working life is right now, showing up online with the dog barking, and like the truck just went past as well on my road. I don't know if you heard that as well. So
Oh, no.
there's
Okay, we're good.
gonna be
I didn't
background
know what my
noise.
mic picks up.
No,
Right. So yeah, I think the combination of the two is really important. I like to, again, it starts with like writing out what it is that you do. And that's what I get people to do as well, just as far as like how do you create a process and a structure or like a step by step or a checklist of what you're doing. Like again, it's going to start with you tracking your time, figuring out what you're actually doing and getting it down. And then once you have that, it becomes easier to see like I can automate these things or I can create templates for these things, and then this is where I can create a personal touch. So that might look like, you know, you might personally email clients like a welcome packet if you're working with people one-on-one. That doesn't have to be automated in like an automated funnel sort of way, but that can be a template. So it saves you time and you know exactly where to get it, and it's like right in your Gmail. So you don't have that cognitive load of like looking for it or writing something new, but you can still add a personal touch because it's actually physically going through your hands. You're going to send the email off. A system isn't going to do it on its own. So just looking for different opportunities where anytime that you notice that you're doing the same thing, like as soon as you do the same thing more than 2 times, it can be a template. Whether that be like a checklist to remind yourself to do the next step tied to whatever it is you're doing, or some sort of template that you can work off of.
yeah, I love it. This is why systems are sexy though, because it allows you to have that flexibility to be able to play with how you show up in your business. So those tasks, and I love that if you've done it twice, then it can be a template. I'm going to use that. You're so right that when we're finding repetition coming up and we start to get bored or overwhelmed with having to do that thing over and over again, that's the thing to focus on. How do I streamline that? How do I automate that? How do I outsource that? What can I do to make that better so that I can show up in the energy that I want and play and connect in the way that I want to? So
Yeah.
I think this is the thing to when we're talking about automations, when we're talking about outsourcing and streamlining, it's not to have loads of technical pieces set up in your business. It's actually to support your energy, to be able to show up in the energy that you want and to bring that feeling of fun and flexibility into your business. Because if we've lost
Yeah.
that, what's the point? This is my thing. It's like we may as well be working in corporate if it's a thing that we're showing up in our business going, oh, I have to do this again today.
Yeah, exactly. I think too with automating, sometimes I see people we sort of like feel pressure to automate like overboard because everybody's telling you to do it. And it's like you said, like the work smarter, not harder. You have this sense that like well, the smart thing to do if I was a smart business owner would be to automate everything so I can like sit back and drink my martini. And then you kind of like spiral into it and then people end up just doing nothing.
Mm,
So just always, like you were saying, like lead with what you want your energy to be like and how you want your experience to be, how you want your clients to experience working with you. Like in the real world, what does it actually look like? And then you can go back and be like, okay, what parts of this can be automated? Which ones don't really need to be fully automated?
yeah. Okay, amazing. So if you were to give your top three tips to someone who is looking at their business right now and trying to figure out how do they make it work better, what would you say to them in the simplest possible terms?
So I feel like I might be repeating myself here, but
That's
it
okay.
really comes down to like starting with knowing what you're doing. And once you see how you're spending your time, there for sure will be pieces that you can eliminate as well. I think that's like I'm a big fan of just like simplifying things and starting with sort of the bare minimum and not overcomplicating things. And then like once you're good with that, then you can build and evolve from there. So tip one is just like knowing what you're doing so that you can figure out what you're doing that is unnecessary. And then from there, you can find ways that you can automate. And then I think the last piece is just allowing yourself sort of the grace and space of going through the discomfort of delegating.
Mm.
Just like having the expectation that it won't necessarily be easy. For some people, it's super easy. Like I had a client where like when I started working with her, she was like, I just don't want to do this. Like I trust you, just go. But that's very, very rare.
Yeah.
And so just knowing that it's going to be like I think going in with the expectation of like, okay, this is going to require some work because it will bring up like, why am I so insecure about letting this go? And all of that, and knowing that that's just a part of the process.
Yeah. Love it. Grace and space. Here for that. Arijana, thank you so much for all of that. How can people find out more, connect with you? Where are you online so they can go and find you?
I'm on Instagram. It's Scale and Simplify, all letters, and then scaleandsimplify.com for my website.
Perfect. I'm going to link all the details in the description on the podcast episode anyway. But thank you so much for being here with us today. It was so lovely to have you on the podcast.
Thank you. It's been fun.